Midori was a miserable desk jockey with absolutely nothing left to live for. But things take a wild turn after she gets home from work one day and collapses from exhaustion, dying on the spot after years of excessive overtime. However, God decides to run it back and gives her a second chance at life in a new world, gifting her the ability to tame any beast. One night, Midori is walking back home after yet another exhausting day at her dead-end job. She's so drained that she heads straight for bed, but on the way there, she trips over absolutely nothing, slams face first into the floor, and dies instantly from the impact. Her soul lifts out of her body, and she starts crying, replaying just how miserable her life had been right up until the end. But that's when God shows up out of nowhere and offers her a deal. He can send her back for a second life if she's willing to help him with something first. There's another world called Aztalan where humans have been persecuting every other race for no real reason, and he wants Midori to go there and figure out whether humanity deserves to be wiped out entirely or given a chance. Midori isn't thrilled, pointing out that crunching spreadsheets is really the only thing she's good at. But God tells her that if she agrees, he'll let her pick any power she wants for her new life. He's clearly expecting something impressive, teleportation or some kind of combat ability. Instead, Midori says all she really wants is the ability to pet fluffy animals. God finds the request bizarre but grants it anyway, giving her the power to be liked by any species except humans. She's sent off to Aztalan and reborn as a baby into a noble family, the third child of a ducal household. Her parents name her Nefertima. Her older brother and sister immediately shorten that to Nima and start gushing over how adorable she is. Inside, Nima is still struggling to process the fact that she actually got reincarnated. She's been born into a city called Larshia, the largest of Aztalan's 3 continents and home to the kingdom of Gash. Her older brother Ralph turns out to be the gentlemanly type, while her sister Karna is full of energy. Her parents are kind and good-looking, though her father has a habit of being a little too laid back for his own good. The family also has a dog named Dee who never leaves her side. Between the eating, the sleeping, and constant access to fluffy animals, Nima finds herself living exactly the life she always wanted, and she quietly thanks God for it. The next day, her mother gets summoned to the royal palace for work and has no one to watch Nima, since her husband is out and the older kids are at the academy. Since Dee isn't allowed inside palace grounds, she asks Nima to be good if she brings her along instead, and Nima happily agrees. On the way there, Nima notices how warmly everyone seems to treat each other and thinks none of them look like people capable of persecuting anyone. Once they arrive, her mother places a protective spell on her before heading off to work. Left on her own, Nima spots a bird and chases after it, but it's too fast and she eventually wears herself out trying to keep up. Just as she's about to rest, a group of animals gathers around her and she happily starts petting them, until the moment gets interrupted by an enormous white tiger appearing out of nowhere. Thanks to her God-given gift, instead of attacking, it starts licking her affectionately, and Nima wraps her arms around its fur, completely delighted. The tiger then lifts her onto its back and carries her toward the palace. A boy suddenly appears and calls out to the tiger by name, Lars, warning Nima that even a well-behaved beast is still a beast and telling her to climb down. He picks her up himself, though she clearly would rather stay on Lars's back. The boy is visibly thrown off. Since Lars has never warmed up to anyone the way he's warmed up to her, he asks about her family, and she tells him she's from the Os family and that her name is Nima. The moment he hears the name Osif, he brings them both to an office where they find his father already hard at work. Her father asks what she's doing there, and the boy explains he found her playing with Lars outside. Her father, stunned, hugs her tightly and thanks the boy profusely, addressing him as His Highness. It turns out the boy is the Prince of Gash. He tells Nima to thank the prince properly, and she does so in her own clumsy way. The man sitting near her father then turns to greet her, and she introduces herself formally, only to learn this is Galdi Ruskash, the king himself. Charmed by her manners, the king invites her to come back and play with Lars again sometime. Later, her mother scolds her for wandering off and playing with what she clarifies is actually called a sky tiger, not a regular one. Nima proudly explains that she and Lars are now friends and that the king personally invited her back. Her mother makes her promise never to interact with the sky tiger where others can see, explaining that he's a sacred beast who draws on elemental power rather than ordinary magic, a much rarer and more sacred form of energy used to bond with a chosen master. Nima is disappointed but agrees. Her parents, meanwhile, are quietly stunned, having assumed she simply had a way with regular animals, not realizing she'd somehow tamed a sacred beast entirely on her own. The next day, Nima returns to the palace, this time to watch her siblings train at the academy. She's seated with her family in the viewing area and asks what's going on. Her father explains that the instructors summon magical soldiers for the students to battle using their own mana. Ralph's match begins, and he wins easily. Nima cheers for him, then realizes she needs to use the bathroom. On her way back, she runs into a boy named Tristan taunting her brother, bragging that he'll crush him in their next match. Nima, irritated, fires back and calls him a clueless fool who doesn't know where he stands. Tristan lunges at her in anger, but the prince steps in at the last second and stops him cold, demanding to know why he'd raise a hand against a child. Tristan backs down immediately, terrified. Ralph is confused at this point and asks the prince how he even knows Nima, and the prince explains he helped her out the other day when she got lost in the palace. When Nima snaps back at him for something he says, the prince offers to let her become his personal companion, which would let her come and go from the palace freely. She agrees right away, prompting him to tease her for calling him a brute earlier. He also makes it clear to Tristan that Nima is now under his protection and that touching her would have serious consequences. As he looks at her, he notices her eyes are black, an unusual trait nobody in this world seems to have. They make their way to the training arena where it's now Karna's turn. Her test requires her to defeat a monster summoned through a magic circle, and what emerges is a powerful holy beast, a fire dragon. The instructors scramble to protect the other students, while her father quietly notes to the prince that Karna's fire affinity is strong but her water affinity is weak, putting her at a disadvantage here. Worried, Nima yells for her to run, but Karna decides to fight instead. Without thinking, Nima bolts onto the training field herself, and right as she's about to fall, an unidentified surge of magic catches her. She rushes toward the fire dragon and calls out for everyone to hold their attacks. Nima steps between the guards and the fire dragon, stopping the attack before it starts. They hold back, and the dragon's attention shifts onto her, clearly confused about why a small child is standing in front of him. He tells her he was forcefully summoned and asks why he should hold back if the people here are the ones hurting him. Nima tells him plainly that despite his strength and tough scales, fighting still hurts him, and she doesn't want to see him put through that. She asks if she can touch his scales, and the dragon is caught off guard by how unafraid she seems. Moved by her sincerity, he lowers himself so she can reach. The guards tense up, certain he's about to hurt her, but the prince stops them, sensing she's doing something deliberate. She reaches out expecting heat, and instead finds his scales smooth and cool. The dragon tells her that once she's older he'll recognize her as his master, and before leaving he gives her an orb meant to keep them connected, knowing she can't easily carry something like that around. He tells her she can reshape it into anything she likes. She turns it into a teddy bear. He explains the orb links them mentally, and may let her draw on his power if she's ever in danger, then introduces himself as Saul before disappearing. Karna rushes over and hugs her, apologizing for putting her in harm's way, and the prince squeezes her cheeks, clearly relieved she's unharmed. Nima notices that despite how blunt he normally is, he was genuinely worried. The prince then turns to her father, Dayland, and orders him to keep a close watch on her, anticipating that people drawn by power will come looking for her. Dayland responds that he'll deal with anyone who tries, which only makes Nima feel like this whole thing has spiraled into something much bigger than it should have. They're brought into court afterward and given a formal introduction in front of the assembled nobility, which leaves Nima nervous under all the attention. The king and queen arrive to address the situation directly. The king already suspects Nima formed a pact with the dragon, but her father clarifies it isn't a formal pact, that she can only draw on the power if she's threatened, and that she has no intention of using it against the kingdom. To settle any remaining doubt, he swears an oath on his own name, the kind that kills him if broken. The director of the Royal Magic Research Center, Salzer, steps in and confirms that the summoning circle was real, and that Karna did nothing wrong. The dragon's appearance was simply divine will, unrelated to anything Karna did. Hearing that, Nima realizes internally that God hasn't actually left her alone in this this world and is probably nudging her toward getting familiar with its creatures, though she has zero interest in that responsibility. The high priest chimes in with religious talk about how the dragon's appearance is a blessing for the kingdom, and Nima quietly decides this is exactly the kind of person God warned her about. She lets it go though, since her real priority remains to be fluffy animals. Reading the rune correctly, the prince can see that Nima is bored, so he suggests letting her go play with Lars, and the king approves. Her whole face lights up afterwards. Lars arrives and after a quiet word from the prince, escorts Nima out of the room, and the two of them head off to his living quarters where she happily feeds him meat by hand, leaving everyone nearby stunned that her tiny hands survive the experience. A maid hands her something to wipe off with, and is immediately charmed by how polite she is. While Nima dozes off using Lars as a pillow, the adults gather and discuss the implications of her bond with a divine fire dragon. Several generals start talking about keeping her under tight watch, less out of concern and more out of interest in what she represents strategically. Her father overhears all of it and is disgusted by how quickly people start treating his daughter as an asset, but he holds his tongue. The high priest then arrives and announces his intention to personally oversee Nima's upbringing and shape her into a holy maiden. Dayland refuses immediately, recognizing it for the manipulation it clearly is. The high priest pushes back and questions whether she's even his biological daughter, pointing out she doesn't resemble her siblings. Cerulia, Nima's mother, steps in and reveals she swore a true name vow with her husband, the kind that brings divine punishment and a visible mark if broken, and shows her unmarked forehead as proof. The high priest tries to argue that only Dayland would have taken such a vow, but Kula clarifies she swore it directly in front of the king, meaning any further doubt amounts to questioning the king's own word. Lars wakes Nima with a lick to the face, and her parents greet her with good news. Nobody is upset with her, and the gift from the dragon is being treated as a blessing rather than a threat. The king himself picks her up and grants her permission to visit the palace whenever she wants. The prince then gets ready to introduce her to more of the palace's animals, but before she can, they run into Gwyn, a member of the royal guard, who the prince tells her she can rely on whenever he isn't around. The prince then sends her, escorted by Gwyn, to the dragon stables, much to Gwyn's confusion given how dangerous the place sounds. There they meet Dan, the caretaker, dressed plainly and clearly there out of genuine love for the dragons rather than status. Gwyn and Dan immediately start bickering, revealing they were old classmates who never really grew out of needling each other, until Nima interrupts by tugging on both their trousers. Dan shows her around, explaining the difference between the flying lind blooms and the ground-dwelling lindrakes, and Nima is itching to pet one despite suspecting Dan won't allow it. Then a strange red light flares around her body, and every dragon in the stable surges toward her at once. Dan and the guards go on high alert, but the lead dragon stops everyone in their tracks. Nima steps forward and greets her by name, Gizzle, explaining that Saul's orb lets her communicate with dragons even without forming a pact. Gizzle allows her onto her back and immediately takes off into the sky, leaving Dan completely stunned. Nima spends the rest of the afternoon playing with the dragons, making flower crowns one of them eats instead of wearing, splashing around in the water, and generally having the time of her life. Meanwhile, Dan and Gwyn piece together what's going on, with Dan noting that Gizzle has never let anyone ride her before, and Gwyn filling in the rest that Nima is the same girl who calmed the fire dragon earlier that day. When she returns with both Lars and some dragons, Dan is left wondering just what kind of child can apparently command holy beasts and dragons alike without even trying. The next day, Dan brings Nima over to the Beast Knight stables, home to all kinds of rare creatures, where they meet the captain of the Legion, a man named Leston Ogma. Les takes one look at how unassuming this little girl is and wonders if she's really the same one Dan has been telling stories about, the one who somehow tamed Gizzle, leader of the dragons, a creature that has never even let Dan ride her. Once he confirms it's true, Les sees an opportunity and decides to dig deeper into what exactly Nima is capable of. He takes her and Dan to the magically maintained horse stables and introduces her to the herd leader, a horse named Uwaz. For the first time, her natural charm doesn't land, and Uwaz flatly rejects her greeting and refuses to play with her. Les explains that Uwaz, while generally good-natured, has a stubborn streak and doesn't listen to much of anything. Nima senses something deeper going on and hugs him anyway, picking up on the fact that as As the herd leader, he's just cautious about letting strangers near the others he's responsible for. Les is genuinely moved by that and apologizes to Yuaz for misjudging him, which makes Nima happy too. They continue on horseback, riding a calm and beginner-friendly horse named Hugh, heading toward the beast stables. Along the way, Nima spots baby giant boars digging through the dirt and asks what they're up to. Les explains they're hunting for bugs underground whenever food runs short, then warns that the babies tend to chase anyone they spot since they just want a playmate, a habit that injures more than a few knights every year. Sure enough, they start chasing the group, and Nima panics until Yuaz lets out a roar loud enough to send them scattering. Further along, Les shows her a group of wakas, the fastest land animals around and commonly used for emergency messages. The moment Nima hears the word fastest, she demands to ride one, and despite Les insisting it requires serious training, her persistence wins out. They mount one named Yoshu, and Les warns her that gripping too tightly will make him stop instantly. She tells him to go as fast as he can. The resulting burst of speed leaves her gasping for air, and Les quickly throws up a protective spell before she passes out. When they finally stop, she swears she'll never ride a waka again, and Les casually mentions that was only about half of his top speed. Dan can't help laughing at her. A messenger hawk arrives and delivers a letter that pulls Les away to deal with some trouble back at the stables. But Nima is not satisfied yet, so she insists on visiting the dragon stables next. Once there, Les learns that a rare white moose has escaped and quickly organizes a search party before heading off himself, mentally tallying everything that's gone wrong today: the missing moose, Yuwa suddenly liking a stranger, and Yoshu behaving for someone other than its handler. His day gets worse the moment Nima strolls back in riding Lars, and somehow, the missing white moose, she explains she simply found it on her way home from visiting Gizzle. Les can barely process it and just asks her to contact him if anything like this happens again, which she agrees to cheerfully. Privately, he can't help feeling a little envious of whatever power she has that makes every animal love her instantly. The following day is Nima's birthday. Her parents offer to grant her one wish, and she asks to visit the city. Her father hesitates at first, worried about the risk, but her mother suggests she go along with Paul and Karna instead. The trip turns out to be Nima's first real shopping outing, and she's amazed by how lively and colorful the market is. Karna explains that the capital is divided into 4 districts: noble, commercial, common, and industrial, all designed by the very first king who wanted the city to look impressive even from above. They stop for food and Nima asks Karna to explain the currency. Learning that Rai is the smallest unit and 10 Rai make 1 copper ingot, she buys 3 pieces of fried chicken for 3 copper ingots and hands them out to Karna, Paul, and even Dee, wanting to treat everyone since it's her special day. A sweet smell catches her attention nearby, leading her to a shop selling fried dough called Pepe. She buys 4 to share, and the shopkeeper, charmed by her, offers a deal where buying 20 gets her 4 extra for just 1 more copper. Nima happily takes the deal, planning to bring some home for her parents too. Karna hugs her, calling her the sweetest little sister imaginable. At a tea house, they run into a girl who recognizes the Oss family and starts mocking Nima for lacking magic, for not resembling her parents, and for her unusual black eyes. Karna shuts that down immediately, pointing out that her sister has earned the approval of the royal family itself, and that this girl has no standing to criticize someone clearly more capable than her own family line. When they return home, the entire household is waiting to surprise her with a party, overwhelmed that everyone made time for her despite how busy they all are. Nima bursts into tears of gratitude and calls it the best day of her life. The queen gifts her a necklace along with some powerful magic stones, and the prince gives her an enchanted bracelet meant to protect her from threats. Les contributes a rain hawk, explaining he noticed her admiring his messenger hawk the day before but felt the bird was too large for her to manage safely, so he found her a more suitable alternative. Everyone else chimes in with their own gifts, and by the end of it Nima declares it the best birthday she's ever had, naming her new hawk Nox. The next day, Nima spends her time training Nox, teaching him to fly further out across the sky. Already convinced the two of them are inseparable, Les and Dan watch from a distance, genuinely stunned by how quickly she's bonded with him, both agreeing her abilities are far beyond anything they can explain. Les asks if she can push Nox a little further tomorrow, but Nima tears up and admits she's starting formal lessons the next day and might not be able to visit nearly as often. That morning, a tutor named Annalisa is brought into her room and introduces herself with crisp formality. Nima takes one look at her tasteful clothes and understated makeup and assumes she's looking at the picture of elegance. That assumption falls apart the moment the butler steps out of the room and Annali's true personality surfaces. She informs Nima that her habit of calling her parents Mama and Papa needs to go, and when Nima simply agrees, Annali strikes her with a cane anyway. Nima glares, and Annali coldly reminds her that nobles never let emotion show, regardless of circumstance. The moment the butler returns with tea, Annali instantly snaps back into her polished, friendly persona, claiming the two of them are already getting along wonderfully. What follows is months of brutal lessons, Annali striking her repeatedly while molding her into proper nobility, occasionally needling her by mentioning how gifted her siblings Ralph and Karna were by comparison, while vowing she'll turn Nima into a proper lady regardless. Exhausted afterward, Nima privately doubts Annali ever treated her siblings this harshly and suspects she's being singled out. She knows reporting this to her father would get Annali removed instantly, but she decides she wants to handle it on her own terms. The abuse continues the next day, Annali striking her again over poor posture, but this time Nima responds with a flawless, practiced smile and a polite promise to do better. Annali is visibly thrown by it, not realizing it's simply a customer service smile carried over from Nima's old life. Even so, Nima privately wonders how long she can keep up the act. That evening, she leaves dinner without finishing her plate for the first time ever, worrying her family. Her mother follows her, but Nima bolts to her room rather than explain. Ralph catches her with a spell before she can shut the door and warns her that their mother is far angrier than Annali could ever be. Cerulia gently asks if Annali is the source of her sadness, and Nima admits she wants to fight this battle herself, rather than have her mother intervene and scare the tutor off. Her mother warns her that Annali is renowned across the kingdom for her composure, and that confronting her head-on is a losing strategy, advising Nima instead to absorb everything she can from her and understand her properly if she ever hopes to win. Before she can respond, Ralph casts a calming spell to lift the heaviness from her chest, promising not to interfere directly, but to always be there to help her recover emotionally. Nima smiles, grateful, and resolves to win this on her own terms. A year passes and Nima transforms into a composed, well-spoken young lady, fluent in proper etiquette across the board. Even Annali begins to acknowledge she carries herself like someone from a family close to royalty. One day, Nima notices Annali looking unusually troubled and asks Paul about it, learning that some of Annali's relatives are devout followers of the Church of Divine Creation. Nima quietly assumes this means a family full of self-important religious nonsense. Curious, she brings up the kingdom of IQ, currently suffering through a brutal drought that's killed many of its people and crippled their food supply. Only Gash and 2 other nations stepped in to help. Nima asks why the church hasn't done anything, and Annali explains, with unsettling calm, that the church's priestesses received a divine revelation claiming IQ angered God by aiding the beast people, and therefore the church is forbidden from helping them even as they starve. When Nima asks if Annali has ever actually met any of the beast people herself, Annali smiles unpleasantly and admits nobody dares get close enough to them. That's when it clicks for Nima. Her unease around Annali was never really about discipline. It's about the toxic ideology she's been steeped in. Furious, Nima tells her she never expected someone as composed as Annali to hold views this ugly. Annali slaps her in response, and Nima realizes in that moment that this was never education to begin with, just disguised cruelty. She tells Annali firmly that as a daughter of the Os family, she intends to become someone who helps people regardless of whether she knows them personally, refusing to bring shame on her father. Annali insists political matters belong only to dukes and kings, but Nima pushes back, saying real ladylike grace means more than fashion sense and silent agreeableness, and asks pointedly how women in this world are expected to please men. Annali flees the room without answering. When Dayland later notices the mark on her cheek, Nima asks him not to punish Annali, insisting on finishing this fight herself. He still issues a quiet warning to Annali regardless. A year later, Nima turns 5, and her father tells her the Os family oversees the northern territories of Gash, inviting her along on his next trip there to broaden her experience. She agrees eagerly. They teleport north through a magic circle and are greeted greeted by Warnus Gilva, the proxy lord of the city Arcenta. Stepping outside, Nima is amazed by the snow falling across the city, until a sudden gust turns it into an icy downpour, and her father quickly warms her with healing magic, reminding her how harsh northern winters can be and bundling her into warm clothes. They continue on to their actual destination, where the local mayor welcomes them with a lavish meal. Dayland explains he's there to address monster attacks by constructing outposts for the knights, and reveals he wants to use Nima's connection to Sol to help clear the surrounding forest. Panicked at the thought of Sol accidentally torching the whole area, Nima contacts him directly. Sol checks the area and confirms there shouldn't be any monsters there at all, only some goblins and frost spiders living much further south. Dayland grows visibly frustrated, suspecting human interference behind the anomaly and vowing to investigate personally, while Nima privately wonders if something far stranger, possibly divine, is actually behind it. The next day, Nima packs the pendant and knife she got for her birthday, feeling like she might need them soon. With Nox by her side, she heads into the forest with the group. As they travel, a villager tells Dayland that he has hunted in these woods for many years, but has never seen anything as strange as the recent events. Later, while the group is resting, Nima hears a noise coming from a tree. She discovers an injured rabbit and rushes over, hoping to pet it. However, the rabbit runs away before she can touch it, making her worry that her ability to befriend animals has stopped working. Not wanting to leave the rabbit injured, Nima chases after it. When she finally catches up, the rabbit jumps into her arms. Relieved, she turns around to return to camp, but suddenly a net falls on her. Moments later, she loses consciousness. When Nima wakes up, she finds herself surrounded by goblins. One of them looks at the rabbit like it wants to eat it, but Nima quickly tells it to stay away. Even though they are monsters, she secretly thinks the goblins are kind of cute. The goblins take her to a cave where she meets two other kidnapped children, Nino and Pino. They tell her that several adults are also being held somewhere else in the cave. Nima asks Sol for help, but he refuses. He says goblins are too weak to be worth his attention. Instead, he offers to let her use his fire magic herself if she is willing to breathe fire from her own mouth. Nima decides not to do that and trusts that her father will come rescue her eventually. While looking for something to eat, Nima meets a goblin carrying a strange fruit. The fruit tastes extremely bitter at first, but after the goblin peels it, it becomes sweet. Nima asks for more fruit so she can share it with the others. Using her birthday knife, she peels one herself. The goblins are impressed and immediately copy what she does, becoming much friendlier toward her. Soon, Nima hears a deep growl and follows the sound. She finds a hobgoblin scolding the smaller goblins for bringing human children into the cave. To her surprise, she can understand him. When Nima asks why they kidnapped people, the hobgoblin explains that goblins naturally protect any lost child, no matter the species. He also says they only attack humans to survive. Long ago, goblins, kobolds, orcs, and ogres were driven from their home by human hunters. Many died, and only the strongest survived long enough to escape and settle here. After hearing the story, Nima realizes that humans are partly responsible for the situation. She decides to tell her father the truth. However, she also refuses to abandon the goblins. Nima asks if they want revenge on humans. The hobgoblin says no. All they want is a peaceful place to live. Nima points out that staying in this forest could harm the local environment because they do not belong there. As she thinks about the problem, she comes up with an idea and quietly shares it with him. The hobgoblin asks if her plan involves killing humans. Nima says no. She believes humans and monsters can reach an agreement and live peacefully. The hobgoblin agrees, but Nima warns him that her father is the biggest obstacle. If he finds her in danger, he will not hesitate to destroy every goblin in the cave. To make her plan work, Nima asks Nino and Pino for help. At first, Nino refuses because she sees the goblins as monsters that deserve no sympathy. Nima argues that they had good reasons for their actions and says she wants to protect them. She asks the siblings to act as bait by pretending to run from the goblins through the forest. Pino worries about his sister's safety, but Nino agrees after seeing how hard Nima is fighting to help creatures everyone else has given up on. The two girls share a heartfelt moment before putting the plan into action. Nino and Pino run through the forest while several goblins chase them from a distance. The villagers notice and rush to help. Just as planned, Dayland orders his knights to protect the children. Once the children are safe, the goblins retreat deeper into into the forest. The knights follow them until they reach the hobgoblin. He announces that he plans to release all the captives, but Dayland attacks before he can explain. Nima quickly blocks the attack using Saul's power, and Dayland immediately recognizes the magic and demands that Nima reveal herself. Realizing her plan is falling apart, she begs him not to attack. He reluctantly agrees, but when they reach the cave, he tries to strike again. Once more, Nima blocks him. Standing in front of the hobgoblin, Nima insists that the goblins are not entirely to blame. She explains how humans forced them from their homeland and left them with nowhere else to go. She begs her father to listen, and after hearing her out, he finally lowers his weapon. Just then, Nox suddenly flies in, chirping loudly. Nima realizes something dangerous is approaching, and it is getting closer fast. Using Saul's power to get a closer look, Nima realizes the creature charging at them is a frost spider, and certainly not a friendly one. It rushes the group, and Nima and her father can only stare in horror, scrambling for a plan. Dayland calls her to his side, and she rushes over immediately, though she notices something off about the spider, that it seems desperately hungry, almost panicked rather than purely aggressive. The hobgoblin steps forward and declares he'll handle the fight himself. Nima tries to intervene, but Dayland holds her back, telling her this is a battle between the strongest and not something she can step into. The spider lashes out with one of its legs, and the hobgoblin blocks it with raw strength, and the two trade blow after blow without either landing a finishing hit. When the spider tries to finish things with poison, the hobgoblin leaps clear and lands a devastating punch that destroys one of its eyes. Watching it unfold, Nima realizes this is basically a fight for survival. The spider collapses and looks unconscious, and the hobgoblin raises his arm in victory, only for the spider to suddenly spring back up and slam down onto him. Nima watches in horror, knowing full well that if the hobgoblin loses here, her father will have every justification to wipe out the goblins entirely to keep the humans safe. Then blood pools beneath the spider's body, and the hobgoblin lifts her off himself and tosses her aside with a tired exhale, having survived thanks to the protective spell Nima cast on him earlier. He thanks her for it, and relief washes over Nima, until she notices something strange happening to her own hands. A green glow spreads across her palms, and the frost spider, still alive, pleads with her for help. Desperate to protect her unborn child, a small spiderling emerges from her body, and it suddenly clicks for Nima. The spider was pregnant the entire time, which explains her desperation. She needed to eat constantly to sustain her spiderling, but the goblins settling in the forest had thrown the local food chain into chaos, leaving her with nothing to hunt. Heartbroken, Nima realizes the spider was a victim of circumstance just as much as anyone else. She kneels beside her and prays quietly, hoping that wherever the spider's soul goes next, it finds peace. Dayland pulls her into a hug as she breaks down crying, admitting through tears that she wishes she could have saved the spider but was too afraid of what that responsibility would mean. She vows instead to grow strong enough that someday every creature, not just some, can live without suffering like this. The hobgoblin watches her with a quiet sadness, and then suddenly begins glowing. Everyone freezes, unsure what's happening, until the light fades and reveals he's transformed into something resembling a human, complete with elf-like ears and two horns. Confused, Nima asks who he is now, and her father speculates he must have evolved somehow. She checks with Saul, who tells her that goblins shouldn't be capable of this. Since hobgoblin is supposed to be the highest tier the species can reach naturally. He mentions hearing of beings called Oni, human-shaped creatures with horns that reside in a place called Wyjite, and says he wants to come see this one for himself the next day. Nima studies the now transformed hobgoblin and privately thinks he resembles someone flashy from her old world. But her father quickly pulls her away and has his knights cover him with clothes. She ends up teaching him how to actually wear them, then thanks him with a hug for saving everyone, which earns her an immediate reprimand from her father telling her to keep her distance and get to bed. The baby frost spider crawls up to her, and Nima asks if it wants to come along with her. It climbs onto her arm without hesitation, and she takes that as a yes, reflecting on how the mother spider sacrificed herself to protect and strengthen her child. Nima names the spiderling Gracia, explaining that the word means thank you, a quiet tribute to the mother's sacrifice. A white mark immediately appears on its head, confirming she's tamed yet another creature. The next morning, the transformed hobgoblin works alongside the smaller goblins to clean up the area. Nima asks if he intends to release the human captives as promised, and he confirms he intends to keep his word. A healing knight arrives carrying the injured rabbit from earlier, fully recovered, and Nima thanks him before asking her father if she can bring the rabbit home with her. Daylan gently refuses, explaining that some creatures are better left where they belong, since domesticating wild animals tends to dull their instincts and leave them unable to survive on their own. He compares it to ripples spreading through the world, explaining that every action, no matter how small, creates consequences that ripple outward indefinitely, colliding with other ripples and reshaping things in ways no one can fully predict. He believes the fewer ripples created, the more balanced the world remains. Nima briefly fumes internally, wanting nothing more than to keep every fluffy creature she meets and considering using her father's authority and Saul's power to bulldoze anyone who objects. Before catching herself and deciding that's not the right path, she lets the rabbit go. She then holds up the baby frost spider and asks if she can keep her instead. Dayland looks horrified and points out that this isn't an animal at all, it's a monster. The transformed hobgoblin steps in to explain the distinction, describing monsters as flawed, defective versions of natural creatures, goblins being defective humans and frost spiders being defective spiders. He explains that monsters start weak, but if someone powerful grants them a name, the world recognizes them as individuals, unlocking the ability to use magic and receive blessings. Curious, Nima asks the hobgoblin for his own name, and he admits he doesn't have one. She's stunned, struggling to understand how he could possibly be this strong without one. He admits he's actually envious of the spiderling, since it already received a name and the mark to prove it. That comment sends Dayland into a small panic, realizing his daughter just tamed yet another powerful monster, leaving him no choice but to accept she's bringing it home. They say goodbye to the goblins and head back to the village. There, the freed captives reunite with their families, and Nima asks Nino and Pino which household they belong to. They reveal they're from the Iriga family, which Dayland recognizes immediately, sending knights to escort them home safely. Pino thanks Nima warmly, while Nino gives her an intense stare that makes Nima briefly assume she's earned her dislike, until Nino surprises her by inviting her to visit sometime. Nima lights up and hugs her, promising she will. The next day, Saul arrives and Nima immediately throws her arms around him, delighting in how smooth his scales feel. He tries to tell her something important, that the transformed hobgoblin isn't actually an Oni, but carries traces of elemental power instead, though she's too distracted petting him to listen properly, prompting him to raise his voice to get her attention. He explains the hobgoblin can apparently wield elemental magic similar to a holy beast, which the hobgoblin himself confirms, admitting he can sense it within himself but has no idea how to actually use it. A nearby knight demonstrates by shaping a small clay figure using earth magic, and Nima asks the hobgoblin to try something similar. Instead, he destroys the clay figure with nothing more than his voice, shocking everyone present. When asked if he can access other elements, he demonstrates fire, wind, water, and earth in quick succession. Nima's mind immediately jumps to how useful this could be for a plan she's been forming, which catches her father's attention and prompts him to ask what exactly she's planning. She tells him she's found a way for humans and monsters to coexist peacefully, promising to explain everything later. Realizing the hobgoblin is essentially an entirely new kind of being, she decides to give him the name Shinky, and the moment the words leave her mouth, a taming mark appears on his forehead, leaving her stunned all over again. She groans, wondering why this keeps happening to her, ultimately deciding it must just be the universe's idea of a joke. She quickly apologizes to Shinky, but he bows deeply instead, pledging both his own loyalty and that of every goblin under his leadership, declaring that since she gave him a name, he will now call her master. Nima blushes and thanks him, quietly accepting that her family just keeps growing stranger by the day. Back at the village, Nima explains her plan for monsters and humans coexisting. The problem, she tells her father, is that monsters are running out of places to live, so the solution is giving them somewhere new. She proposes sealing off an uninhabited mountain with a barrier and relocating displaced monsters there, with the option of turning it into an adventurer's guild training ground if the population grows too large. Inns and shops at the base would cover costs, and adventurers and monsters would naturally keep each other in check. Daylan points out the obvious risk of monsters killing humans for survival, but Nima reminds him survival has always worked that way. Impressed despite himself, he agrees to seriously seriously consider it. He then asks Shinki to join him on the next leg of his trip, valuing his elemental abilities and knowledge of monsters. Shinki admits he can't leave his nest unattended for long and asks Nima, calling her master, to name the next strongest goblin so they can guard the nest while he's away. Nima, still uncomfortable with the title, asks him to think of her as a friend instead, and he immediately switches to calling her my lady. He introduces her to his second in command, a female goblin close to evolving into a hobgoblin herself, and after learning she likes flowers, Nima names her Suzuko. Another weaker goblin steps forward asking for a name too, explaining his previous horde was wiped out and he wants the strength to protect his new one. Nima hesitates, worried he might not have the potential, but sets him a challenge instead, telling him if he can take down a giant boar before she returns from her trip, she'll name him. He accepts without flinching, and she gives him the name Tauki on the spot, hoping it pushes him toward real strength. As she and Shinki head out, he asks why she's always surrounded by people and creatures. She tells him she simply loves her family and everyone around her. He admits quietly that his only real family was an older brother who died in battle, and Nima pats his cheek and tells him he has her now. They travel on to the town of Cass in the Parzath domain, with Shinki providing directions along the way. Daylan studies a regional map marking where monster attacks have spiked and suspects the pattern is man-made rather than natural. He tells Nima she'll be staying with Ralph, who's arriving shortly, while he investigates further, and she lights up at the thought of spending time with her brother. In Cass, Daylan meets with the mayor while Nima slips off to the Adventurers Guild with Shinki. There she meets a young woman named Bella, who initially objects to Shinki's presence, unaware of who he actually is. Nima brushes it off and they're allowed to look around. While sitting with Bella, a man stands up and loudly accuses the mayor of corruption, claiming he posted an inflated bounty that his own son accepted and has been pocketing guild funds meant for adventurers. Bella identifies him as Heelran Dewitt, a former town official pushed out after clashing with the mayor. Curious, Nima approaches him directly, and after a rocky start where he dismisses her as a child, she introduces herself as Nefertima Osf, daughter of Dayland. His attitude shifts instantly, and he introduces himself as the town's new financial auditor. He explains that monster attacks have surged across the domain while Cass has barely seen any, despite the mayor filing false casualty reports and collecting restitution money. He recalls one real incident where adventurers handled a goblin attack but never returned, and shows her a map revealing a kobold-heavy region he suspects they were secretly sent into. Nima's mind immediately drifts to the idea of a kobold leader she could potentially recruit into her plan, before blurting out that she just wants to pet them, much to everyone's confusion. She asks Dewitt to come meet her father and sends Nox ahead with a message. Bella asks to tag along too, wanting to help her town, and Nima agrees happily. They arrive at the mayor's office to find Dayland already there, visibly upset that Nima wandered off without permission. He tells her bluntly that her behavior was reckless, and that introducing her to society this early might have been a mistake. Stunned by how serious he is, Nima starts crying, understanding she left without her guards and put others at risk of punishment on her behalf. Ralph steps in immediately, refusing to let their father make her cry further, which only makes her cry harder, comforted that her siblings always stand by her even when she's wrong. Just as Dayland reaches to wipe her tears, it turns out to be the prince, Will, who's arrived with Lars in tow, having heard from Ralph that Nima was in town and deciding to stop by. Everyone bows in surprise. Dayland then notices Bella and Dewitt and asks who they are, and once Dewitt explains everything he uncovered, Dayland storms into the mayor's office. The mayor's denials don't hold up, and Dayland removes him from his position on the spot. Nima gets relieved at the sight, so she turns her attention to playing with Lars. The next day, Dayland praises Dewitt for his investigation and thanks him for uncovering important information. He offers Dewitt a role in the mission, but Dewitt says he has nothing else to return to anyway. Nima suggests bringing both Dewitt and Bella along, believing they could be valuable allies. Before continuing, Dayland warns everyone that the mission will be dangerous. He asks for complete loyalty and secrecy from everyone present, including the prince. Everyone agrees. Dayland then explains Nima's plan to create a place where humans and monsters can live together. The prince laughs at how bold the idea sounds, but admits that Nima's unusual gifts may make it possible. He believes God gave her these abilities for a reason. Dayland officially places Ralph in charge of the mission, and Ralph proudly accepts. Soon, Shinky returns from scouting. Nima immediately runs over and hugs him, which confuses Ralph. When he asks who Shinky really is, Nima explains that he was once a hobgoblin, but evolved into a stronger form. She also reveals that he is now one of her tamed companions and serves as her bodyguard. Nima asks about his scouting mission. Shinky reports that he found a group of goblins led by a hobgoblin who refused to cooperate. After defeating them, he brought them under his control. The conversation then turns to the kobolds near Lennis City. Dayland confirms there have been reports of kobold attacks. The Knight Commander reveals the situation is much larger than expected. Hundreds of kobolds are active in the region. They are organized into several groups, each led by a high kobold, and all of them answer to an even stronger leader, a werewolf. The information came from the Adventurers Guild, which surprises everyone. Dayland finds it suspicious that such important information never reached the capital. When he learns that the local guild commander once worked at headquarters, Nima begins to suspect someone is hiding information on purpose. Dayland comes to the same conclusion. Bella offers to investigate the guild, but the prince warns that their enemies could be hiding anywhere. The growing conspiracy worries Nima, but Ralph reassures her that Dayland is already thinking several steps ahead. To keep things organized, Dayland names the hidden enemy group Runohark and refers to the entire situation as the Southern Province Incident. He announces that he will return to the capital while Ralph continues leading the mission. The knights pledge their support, and Nima thanks them for believing in her plan. Later, Nima tries to take a nap with Lars, but Ralph reminds her that Lars belongs to the prince. Annoyed, she threatens to sleep beside Shinky instead, causing the boys to quickly drag Shinky away. Eventually, Nima settles down with Gracia, and the two enjoy a peaceful nap together. The next day, the group travels toward Lennis City. Along the way, the prince discusses what to officially call Nima's project. After rejecting several ideas, he settles on the name the Shiana Project, a phrase from an ancient language meaning strength and courage. Back at the capital, Dayland informs the rest of the family about the mission. Karna is shocked that Nima has been allowed to travel into danger at such a young age. However, she feels a little better after learning that powerful holy beasts are protecting her. Keela listens to the full story and is proud of Nima's efforts. She agrees that monsters deserve the right to live just like humans, wanting Karna to become stronger as well. She arranges for skilled adventurers to help train her. Karna is excited when she learns that their Uncle Philip, a famous purple rank adventurer, will be arriving soon to help. Meanwhile, Nima's group finally reaches Lennis City. At the gate, the guards allow them entry after seeing the royal seal, but explain that the city captain wishes to speak with the prince. While Ralph and the prince handle the meeting, Nima secretly listens in using wind spirits. The captain, Dylan Noctis, warns them that the area is becoming dangerous because of kobold attacks. Ralph explains that they are acting under Dayland's orders, and the captain accepts their explanation. The group is then taken to meet the acting lord of the city. Exhausted from dealing with constant attacks, the lord explains that he has already requested help from the Adventurers Guild. A powerful adventurer named Red H-Lada is gathering a team and will arrive soon. The prince mentions that H-Lada is extremely skilled. Hearing this, Nima immediately realizes the danger. If such a powerful adventurer reaches the kobolds first, they could all be wiped out. Understanding her concern, Ralph asks the lord to point them toward the kobolds so they can attempt a peaceful solution before H-Lada arrives. As they travel through town, they come across several boys bullying a helpless puppy. Nima immediately scolds them. One boy claims his father taught him that dogs are enemies. Realizing he is probably confusing dogs with kobolds, Nima tells him that hurting something weaker than yourself is wrong. The boy angrily tries to hit her, but the knights stop him. Nima calmly explains that true strength should be used to protect others, not bully them. She asks the boys to hand over the puppy, and they reluctantly agree. Before leaving, Nima encourages the boy to become someone who protects people instead of hurting them. Inspired by her words, he introduces himself and promises to grow stronger. Ralph heals the injured puppy, but once it recovers, it keeps staring toward the forest. Nima quickly realizes it wants to go home. Shinky confirms her suspicion and reveals that the puppy is actually a young kobold. Everyone is shocked at the sight. The little kobold clearly wants to return to its mother, but but the prince warns that approaching the kobold settlement could be dangerous. Even so, when Nima sees the sadness in the pup's eyes, she makes up her mind. No matter the risk, she vows to help the lost kobold find its way home. The next day, Nima and her group set out to return the lost kobold cub to its mother. Along the way, Duet notices something strange. The city's noon bell never rang. According to local law, the bell must ring every hour, even during emergencies. Suspecting that something is wrong in town, he asks to investigate on his own. Nima agrees, but tells him to be careful and come back immediately if he finds any danger. With that, the group splits up. As they continue deeper into the forest, the kobold cub excitedly tells them they are heading in the right direction and urges them to hurry. It is clearly eager to see its mother again when Nima starts slowing down. Shinky picks her up and carries her, much to the annoyance of Ralph and the prince. Soon, they hear rustling in the bushes. Expecting trouble, they investigate and discover a small slime. Nima is immediately interested in the creature, but Shinky explains that it is actually asking for help. Since he can understand monster languages, he learns that the slime's companion is in trouble, wanting to help. Nima follows the slime to a much larger one. A knight explains that it is a parent slime. Inside its body are unborn baby slimes waiting to be born. Unfortunately, the cold environment makes giving birth extremely dangerous. The prince adds that once slimes become parents, they can no longer move, leaving the creature trapped where it is. Nima struggles to find a solution until she learns something surprising. Slimes cannot reproduce while living inside another creature's body. After confirming that it would not harm her, Nima offers to let the slime live inside her until it is safe. Since her special ability allows her to bond with monsters safely, she is the only one who can do it. The slime agrees, and Nima names her Shizuku. The transfer succeeds without any problems. Soon afterward, Nima learns that another slime nearby will face the same issue in the future, so she bonds with that one as well, naming her Haka. With the slime safe, the group continues their journey. The kobold cub reminds Nima that he is still waiting to see his mother, and she promises they will not forget about him. However, finding the kobold settlement proves difficult. Even powerful magic and Lars's senses fail to locate it. Realizing that something must be hiding the settlement, Nima asks Lars to release a wave of energy throughout the forest. Eventually, they discover a massive tree surrounded by animals. Nima quickly realizes that the tree itself is the forest guardian, a powerful being protecting the area. She politely introduces herself and explains that they only want to return the lost cub. At first, the forest guardian refuses to reveal the kobold's location. He explains that humans have hunted and mistreated kobolds for years, forcing them into hiding. Nima understands his concerns, but she explains that her goal is not to harm them. Instead, she wants to prevent future conflict and help humans and kobolds coexist peacefully. Seeing that she is sincere, the guardian agrees to help and opens a path leading to the hidden settlement. As they continue, the atmosphere suddenly changes. The animals around them become nervous. Moments later, a hostile creature called a mamushi attacks Nima. Nox quickly knocks it away, and Lars finishes it off. Afterward, Shinky mentions that mamushi tastes surprisingly good when cooked. Curious, the group roasts the creature and discovers that it is actually delicious, thinking the kobolds might appreciate the food. Nima has the knights gather more to use as a peace offering. Not long after, a group of kobolds suddenly appears and surrounds them. Before anyone can panic, Nima explains that they come with the forest guardian's blessing and offers the roasted mamushi as a gift. The kobolds are impressed and agree to guide them to their village. Soon, the group arrives at a hidden settlement filled with kobolds living their daily lives. Nima is immediately enchanted by the sight and thinks it looks like a paradise full of fluffy creatures. A female kobold approaches and demands to know why humans have entered their territory. Nima calmly explains that they have come to return a lost cub. When the cub is reunited with his mother, everyone is relieved. However, the mother is shocked to learn that he somehow ended up outside the forest. The cub admits that the other young kobolds left him behind, causing several adults to become angry. Before the situation can turn into an argument, Nima steps forward with the food they brought. The gesture helps calm everyone down. As the kobolds enjoy the meal, Nima quietly begins thinking about the future. If she can earn their trust now, this small act of kindness might become the first step toward building peace between humans and kobolds. After that, Nima brings food to the rest of the kobolds, who are clearly thrilled to eat something other closer than what they've been struggling to hunt lately. Their leader, Cicely, isn't won over though, and tells Nima to go home. Nima tries offering more food as a distraction, but Cicely has lost too many of her people to humans to be swayed easily. She warns Nima that an extermination squad is coming, having read it in the stars, which are telling her to stay rather than flee. Nima pitches Project Shiana to her, a plan for humans and monsters to live together peacefully. Cicely rejects it flatly, saying she doesn't trust humans, and asks her to leave. Ralph agrees it's getting late, so Nima heads home, promising to return tomorrow. After she leaves, Cicely stares at the stars, sensing a flicker of hope as she wonders whether Nima could be the chosen one. Back home, Ralph and the prince both receive letters outlining new duties. Ralph learns Karna is coming to join them, which worries Nima since having all her siblings together feels significant. The prince is given authority to inspect and even detain the knights if needed, a level of trust he's never held before, which Nima hopes will help root out corruption. When the prince asks why she's smiling, she admits it's simply because he'll be staying close to her, making him blush. He also uses spirit magic to check on Duet, who hasn't returned yet, and confirms he's just lying low, easing Nima's worry. She heads back to the kobolds with more food. Cicely notices Nima kept her promise and watches, increasingly intrigued, as Nima interacts effortlessly with her tamed spider, slime, and other monsters without any trouble at all. Convinced, Cicely finally starts believing the Shiana project could actually work. Nima promises she won't betray them and commits to protecting them fully, which overwhelms Cicely into tears as she opens up about losing nearly her entire bloodline, leaving only herself and her beloved younger sister. Nima offers Haka to comfort her and explains her full plan to relocate the kobolds somewhere safe, along with her broader goal of building real harmony between humans and monsters. Moved, Cicely agrees to trust her completely and goes to gather the other clan leaders. Nima meets the different bloodlines, instantly charmed by one named Hanley, who's stunned that someone so young leads the Goblin and Shinky clan, but accepts it regardless. He explains his bloodline specializes in healing, and that kobolds split between hunters and those handling daily tasks, usually living separately but cooperating when needed. Nima can't resist touching his fur and is joined by Ralph and the prince, both equally delighted, though Hanley firmly shuts down her suggestion of using his fur for magic. Cicely returns and redirects everyone to the assembled leaders, who agree the plan offers real hope for peace, though finding a permanent new home remains unresolved. They choose to stay and face the coming extermination squad rather than flee. A young cat-like girl suddenly interrupts, warning everyone not to trust Nima. Cicely scolds her, revealing she's her younger sister from a Starwolf tribe. The girl insists humans are cruel and greedy, and admits, through tears, that she just wants to fight to protect her people. Nima invites her to join their group instead, promising safety for her and her sister, and can't resist petting her ears in the process. Cicely tells the girl to protect Nima going forward, calling her their last hope, something Nima brushes off since she already has Ralph and the prince watching over her. Nima asks Ralph to infiltrate the extermination squad, reasoning his healing magic could prevent unnecessary deaths. He agrees, and the kobolds begin preparing. One offers his younger siblings as messengers, which Nima accepts gladly. The group then approaches the squad's leader for a private discussion, and on the way Nima spots Duet disguised as a servant and quietly arranges to meet him later that night. Inside, Ralph expresses interest in formally joining the squad to help from within, but the conversation is interrupted when a worried knight rushes in and pulls the leader away. After that, Shinky contacts nearby spirits and learns several knights were injured trying to break up a clash involving adventurers. Nima and the others rush to check it out, only to be completely stunned by what they find waiting for them. As they take a look at the wounded knights, Ralph notices the healers on hand can't cover all the injuries and steps in himself. Nima can't quite process how the damage got this bad. The prince explains they were ambushed by a carnivorous creature, with the wind-based cuts coming from magic. As Ralph channels his healing, Nima quietly prays for him, and his magic instantly heals every knight present. The squad leader is amazed, praising Ralph's gift without realizing Nima's prayer played any part at all. Once everyone's recovered, a knight explains they were attacked from behind inside the dungeon by a beast under the control of a beast master. Nima is stunned something like that is even possible, while the prince privately starts believing the old rumors might be true after all. That night, exhausted, Nima heads to Ralph's room and finds Dewitt already there. He reveals that since joining the Knights, he's confirmed the regional commander has been embezzling relief funds and taking bribes, though he has no hard proof since the regional Knights cover their tracks well. The prince suggests checking their supply orders instead, since overstocking tends to leave a paper trail, and assigns Dewitt to the task, handing over his own royal crest. Nima realizes that crest now makes him a bigger target and tells him to prioritize his safety, quietly asking the spirits to protect him. Dewitt thanks her sincerely before they part. Ralph mentions the Red H-Lotta group arrives tomorrow, and the prince reassures him not to worry about Nima, since she chose this path herself. The next day, the prince briefs everyone on the plan, organizing 15 teams paired with healers each, watching him commit his own men to protecting monsters. Nima is struck by how fully he's chosen to support her, even without grasping her whole vision yet. Then she tells the kobolds to prepare for battle and possible loss. After that, the prince can see the sad look on her face and urges her not to dwell on failure, reminding her how crucial her role is. Just then, a wind spirit reports that the captured beast and its beast master have escaped, and Ralph's squad rushes to investigate, leaving Nima more anxious than ever. The next morning, the kobold cubs greet her affectionately, and one of the older fighters tells her not to blame herself, explaining every kobold chose to fight and that her focus matters more than she knows. The Star Wolf girl checks on her too, and Nima can't resist petting her ears before the girl suddenly senses adventurers entering their territory. The Red H-Lotta group gets lost twice navigating the forest, exactly as planned. At the checkpoint, Shinky blinds them with fog while Lars strikes with lightning, and the kobolds capture the beast master, binding him to a tree. When he commands his beast to launch a sneak attack, Gracia paralyzes both of them with venom, and Nima is relieved to learn they're just paralyzed and not dead. The prince launches the next wave of traps and elemental attacks, but the group proves resilient, with a healer named Sarah reviving fallen members. Nima seeks Saul's help, but he refuses, warning his magic would harm her too. With no alternative, she sends the kobolds into direct combat, and they're quickly overwhelmed. One of the squad members detects nearby humans, even hearing what sounds like a child's voice before dismissing it as imagination. Their leader Yuga, sensing they're close to victory, pushes forward until a massive fire explosion makes him reconsider, advising a retreat to regroup. However, the squad leader disagrees, insisting they've already cut the kobold numbers in half, but Yuga warns continuing risks losing everyone. Sarah suspects the kobolds might be using this fight as a distraction, theorizing their final evolution is a werewolf form being held in reserve. Yuga explains evolved monsters gain serious advantages in magic and speed, and fears they have no real chance if true werewolves are waiting. Ralph gathers the group and, after swearing them to secrecy, reveals the existence of a hostile faction to the north hunting monsters and driving them south, known only as Runohark. Yuga brings up the child's voice again, but Ralph suggests it was likely one of the female fighters or simple imagination. Wary of facing unknown reinforcements, the squad leader finally orders a full retreat, just as Ralph breathes a sigh of relief. Lightning strikes nearby, and when they investigate, every kobold has vanished without a trace. At the same time, Nima is stunned at the sight of wounded and dead allies around her. While the commander's sister breaks down crying at the carnage, Nima realizes this battle was nothing like before. Friends gone in hours, and the weight of it settles into guilt. Her sadness turns to anger, and Shinky and the prince arrive, ordering a lightning strike to cover their retreat before pulling everyone back to safety. About an hour later, they reach safety, and the commander reports the toll: 14 dead and 11 critically wounded despite everything the healers tried. Nima is devastated, blaming herself, remembering a kobold who threw himself in harm's way to save her. Recalling something the commander once said about responsibility, she pulls herself together and tells everyone to stop crying, insisting it dishonors those who died protecting them. One of the soldiers blames her directly. She doesn't deny her mistakes, but refuses to let anyone disrespect the fallen, vowing to grow stronger and risk everything to protect the rest of them. Suzuko pledges the same. The commander steps in, reminding everyone that grief alone won't undo what happened, and that honoring the fallen means moving forward. He declares that since he brought Nima here, any hatred toward her should fall on him too, and openly calls her their savior. The group finds renewed hope in her leadership, praising how far they've come because of her. The healer leader echoes the same sentiment, and the group formally commits to continuing forward together. They plan their next move, relocating the kobolds to Mount Leitimo near the Miokska border, leaving the fallen temporarily in the forest guardian's care. As the sun sets, Cicely asks if her younger sister can join the journey to help her adjust to life among humans, and Nima agrees immediately. Cicely then asks Nima to formally name her sister, insisting she's not a monster and shouldn't be tied to the tribe unless Nima does it personally. Nima chooses the name Spica, after the spring star marking winter's end, and the girl is overjoyed. 2 more young kobolds ask to be named as well, and Nima gives them Sego and Rikuse, taming marks appearing instantly as they run off delighted. After that, the prince calls everyone back since Ralph has news about the extermination team's camp. Nima says a temporary goodbye to Suzuko before heading to the palace with the prince and Shinki, planning to teleport onward the next day based on Dewitt's findings. There, Dewitt presents falsified receipts, missing goods, and tampered usage logs, confirming the corruption runs deeper than expected. The prince decides to launch a full investigation and request agents from the capital, preferring to dig deeper before making arrests. Later, Ralph arrives with good news, no further losses, and everyone gathering for the honor ceremony that night. Nima is amazed by the crowd and the food, and Ralph advises her to stay close to him and the prince. The prince thanks the assembled knights for their work, though the commander credits the group effort for limiting casualties. A man named Luck introduces himself as being from the Ice Bear tribe, honored to meet the Wind Beast, and asks Nima's name. She introduces herself properly, and he admits he struggles with formal etiquette, which she brushes off kindly. He's surprised to learn she considers Lars a friend rather than just a sacred beast, and the two end up getting food together, with the prince and other knights joining in, clearly amused by how quickly Nima's taken to him. She asks to touch his ears, and he agrees, letting her feel the fur. Elsewhere, she notices a boy named Belger hard at work washing dishes. The moment Nima calls out to him, Belger snaps back and tells her to distract him. After Nima reassures him that she won't interfere, Belger explains he's working to become as strong as his father to protect everyone before hurrying off back to work. After that, Lack remarks that Nima doesn't carry herself like typical nobility, and she admits she hears that a lot. Reuniting with her family, Karna hugs her tightly, and over dinner Nima praises the food while sharing some with Nox, Gracia, and Haka. Karna mentions she's formed her own bond with monsters and feels blessed by the divine creator. Nima gently encourages her to focus on her studies rather than feel pressure to keep up, and Karna insists she only wants to make the family proud. Lack assures Nima she can rely on him despite his limited skills outside combat, and she appreciates it, hoping his kindness chips away at misconceptions about monsters. That night, Saul appears at her balcony and wakes her gently, curious why he's traveled all this way. She joins him as they fly north together. Saul reflects on the world's beauty and humanity's obliviousness to it, and Nima agrees, admiring humans' sincerity despite their recklessness. Watching the diversity of life below her, she renews her commitment to the Shiana project, picturing a future where humans and monsters can finally coexist in peace. This was the end. Watch the next video on screen and subscribe to not miss more recaps.